All right, let's jump right in. How does a school actually make sure that every student in every single classroom gets a really powerful learning experience? It's a huge question. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on how Clearfield High School does it. They use a special version of the Davis model of instruction, and it's basically their blueprint for teaching and learning. It's a really cool, structured way of looking at education. And there it is. Okay, I know what you're thinking. At first glance, this might look a little complicated, right? But trust me, it's actually a blueprint for success. It breaks everything down into 7 key parts that all fit together. And don't worry, we're going to go through it piece by piece. But here's the real question, isn't it? What does a diagram like this actually mean for a student's day-to-day life in school? When you're sitting in a math class or trying to understand a history lesson, what does this blueprint actually feel like? That's exactly what we're about to find out. So think about it like this. Every great building needs a solid foundation, right? Well, a great lesson is no different. The Clearfield model gets this, and it starts by putting down 2 absolutely essential cornerstones. And this happens before any new content even gets introduced. And here are those 2 pillars working together. On the one hand, you've got the human side of things, building relationships. This is all about creating trust, a connection, a feeling that you belong. But on the other hand, you need structure. That means establishing clear rules and procedures so there's clarity and safety. When you put those 2 together, you get this amazing, predictable space where students feel secure enough to actually engage, ask questions, and maybe even take a few intellectual risks. Let's dig a little deeper into this building relationships part. This really gets to the heart of the model's philosophy. It's all about putting people first, even before the academic stuff. Because, let's be real, learning doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It happens between people. When a student feels seen and respected and actually connected to their teacher and classmates, well, they're just so much more likely to jump in and participate. It's the essential human groundwork for everything else. Now for the other side of that foundation. It's so important to get this right. This is not about rigid control or just a long list of don'ts. It's actually about creating freedom through structure. Think about it. When everyone knows the expectations, like how to ask a question, how to turn in work, how we treat each other, all that confusion and anxiety just melts away. It makes the classroom run smoothly, and more importantly, it makes it a safe space for everyone to learn. Okay, so we've poured the concrete, the foundation is solid. Now we get to move into the engine room of the model. This is the active, dynamic part of the lesson. This is where the real learning happens. So if we look back at our main blueprint, you can see this active cycle right here on the left. It's a 3-part loop: engaging students, letting them process the content, and then reviewing it. This right here, this is the beating heart of how a lesson actually works. Let's walk through how this loop actually plays out. First up, engagement. The teacher has to hook the students, right? Grab their attention with a cool question or a fun activity. Then comes the really critical part: processing. You have to give students the time and the tools to actually wrestle with the new information, to make it make sense in their own heads. And finally, you circle back. You review and reinforce those key ideas to make sure they stick, moving from short-term memory to long-term understanding. I love this because it really captures the whole idea. Learning isn't a spectator sport. This whole loop is designed to get students off the sidelines and into the game. They're not just supposed to sit there and absorb information. No. They're active participants who are building their own understanding. All right, so the foundation is laid, the learning loop is spinning, but how do we know if it's actually working? And just as important, how do we keep that momentum going? Well, that brings us to the final 2 pieces of this whole puzzle. And here they are: assessment and celebrating success. This is how we close the loop. Think of assessment as the diagnostic check, figuring out what stuck and what didn't, and celebrating success. That's about acknowledging the hard work and progress. It's the motivational fuel that keeps the whole engine running. Now, the key thing to understand here is that assessment doesn't just mean a big, scary test at the end of the unit. Not at all. In this model, it's something that's happening all the time. It could be as simple as a quick poll, or a question to the class, or one of those exit tickets where you jot down an answer on your way out the door. It's any little tool that gives the teacher real-time feedback so they can adjust what they're doing right then and there. And I think this last piece is so powerful. Celebrating success. It's so much more than just a pat on the back. When you intentionally recognize achievement and growth, big or small, it builds a student's confidence like nothing else. It proves to them that their effort matters. And see how it connects? It feeds right back into that first step of building positive relationships.
Okay, we've looked at all the individual parts, right? The foundation, that core learning loop, and the outcomes. So now let's zoom back out and see how this all connects into one powerful, continuous cycle.
So you might be looking at all this and thinking, okay, this is just a fancy checklist for teachers, right? Build relationships, check. Use engagement strategies, check. But is that really all it is? Or is the real magic in how all these pieces work together? Let's look at the full blueprint one more time because now you can really see the flow. See? Strong relationships make it way easier to establish procedures. Those clear procedures create the safety kids need to really engage. That engagement leads to deeper processing and review. And then, meaningful assessment lets us celebrate success, which, you guessed it, strengthens those relationships right back at the start. It's not a list, it's a living, breathing, self-reinforcing cycle. So in the end, this model is so much more than just a diagram hanging on an office wall. It's a promise. It's a promise from the school to its community that this is the level of thought, the level of care they're aiming to bring for every single student in every single lesson, every single day. And that's what takes a school from being good to being truly great.